Okay, another very quick video on the exam technique for the Germany and civil rights 16-mark questions. Remember that the Germany and civil rights questions are exactly the same technique. 6-marker, 8-marker, 16-marker, they've both got exactly the same technique. They're both on the same paper, which makes it quite easy to remember. But yeah, so once you've done a Germany 6-marker, you know how to do a civil rights 6-marker and vice versa. Anyway. 16 markers for Germany and civil rights. What I've done here is I've got another example question, which I think you guys have done this, year 11. Maybe not, but anyway, this is an old Germany 16 marker. So you can see here, it says the Depression was the main reason that Hitler became Chancellor of Germany in January 1933. How far do you agree? Explain your answer. Now, and as I say, civil rights will be exactly the same. You'll get a statement. How far do you agree with this? Explain your answer. Now, first thing, you know this already, I'm preaching to the choir, but the first thing you notice about the 16 markers for these questions are you get these two moderately helpful bullet points down here. I say moderately because it says here, you may use the following in your answer. Well, the first bullet point is always the thing that's been mentioned in the question. And it's like, well, of course you're going to talk about that in your answer. Otherwise, you're not answering the question. If it's a question about the Great Depression or a question that, mentions the Great Depression, you're probably going to talk about the Great Depression anyway. So it's not really the most helpful thing in the world that they put that as the first bullet point, but whatever. Anyway. The second bullet point is always something else, something different that you might want to talk about. In this case, on this question, they've put the role of the Sturmabteilung, the SA. You must also use information of your own. Now, I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here. I know I haven't gone through how to structure it yet, but this is quite an important point. What a lot of people do, I see this year on year, every single year, people do this, and it's a bit daft. People go into the exam. Remember, you've got a choice of 16 marker as well. Should have said that as well. So for the Germany and civil rights topics, you will have 2 16 markers and you choose which one you want to do. So that's very important to note that if you get in there and you look at the first 16 marker and go, oh my word, I can't answer that. Have a look at the other one. You'll probably be able to do the other one. Anyway, I'm digressing. The second bullet point, you do not have to talk about that second bullet point. You do not have to talk about that second bullet point. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. You could talk about the Depression and 2 other things, whatever they may be. You've got to talk about at least one other thing anyway from your own knowledge. But that second factor, you do not have to include that. So again, some people get into the exam, they start the 16 marker, they talk about, the named factor, and then they feel like they have to talk about that second factor and they end up writing, not some stuff that isn't very good because maybe it's something they didn't have a very good knowledge of or they hadn't revised it well enough. And they kind of dig themselves a bit of a hole. You do not have to talk about that second bullet point. You obviously, and this leads in quite nicely to the structure, you obviously do have to talk about 3 different factors. So You'll talk about the named factor, in this case the Great Depression, in that first main paragraph, introduction, main paragraph, talk about the Great Depression or whatever the named factor is in the question. And then you'll do 2 other paragraphs, 1 for each factor. So, I'll hold it up, probably a bit easy to explain with the sheet of paper in front. Introduction. Just like any other 16 marker, whether it's a First World War 16 marker, or even a Middle East 16 marker. I know we haven't got onto the Middle East yet, but any 16 marker, you need an introduction. And your introduction, as always, needs to say what your argument is. So, in this case, the question is essentially what was the main reason why Hitler became Chancellor? If you think it was the Great Depression, great. Tell me in the introduction. I think the Great Depression was the main reason why Hitler became Chancellor. If you think it was something else, such as, propaganda, Nazi propaganda, then again, say, I don't think that the Great Depression was the main reason why Hitler became Chancellor in 1933. I think it was propaganda because, just like in any other 16 marker, tell me what you're arguing in the introduction, tell me what else you're focusing on, that's what you need to do in an introduction. So, that's fairly straightforward. First main paragraph, as I said, the thing talked about in the question, the thing mentioned in the question. Now, I've said this to you guys quite a few times, so I don't mind saying it again. It's good to repeat yourself in this case, not in your exam. Obviously, if you are arguing, let's use this example, if you are arguing that the Great Depression was the main reason, then that's quite easy because you just go straight in and go, right, the Great Depression, here's why it was the main reason. If you're arguing it was something else, fine, absolutely fine, but I would always include the named factor as your first paragraph. So even if you think the Great Depression wasn't the main reason for Hitler becoming Chancellor, still talk about it in that first paragraph for two reasons. Well, it's kind of the same reason, really. But the reason being, one, you are clearly answering the question, because the question is, the Great Depression was the main reason why Hitler became Chancellor. How far do you agree? You clearly, by talking about the Great Depression, the examiner can't accuse you of not, answering the question and not understanding the question, because you're clearly talking about the question. But also it means that if you did your first paragraph on something else, whether it's the essay or propaganda or whatever, if, heaven forbid, you run out of time, when that paper gets handed in, if you just had an introduction and a paragraph talking about, propaganda or the essay, the examiner's going to go, yeah, but they haven't really mentioned the Great Depression very much. So therefore, are they actually answering the question? So regardless of what you're arguing, I would always do the named factor first. Obviously, if you're arguing that the Great Depression wasn't the main reason for Hitler becoming Chancellor, make that clear at the end of the paragraph. Talk about how the Great Depression clearly did contribute to Hitler becoming Chancellor, because it did. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of that paragraph, you probably then want to link back to your argument and say, look, however, even though the Great Depression did contribute to Hitler becoming Chancellor, I think that the essay was a more important reason because, or I think that propaganda was a more important reason because. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Then, obviously, your second paragraph, then you can go into, depending on what you've argued, go into another factor, whether it's essay, propaganda, or anything else like that. And then third paragraph, again, another factor. So, introduction, paragraph 1 on the named factor, paragraph 2 and paragraph 3 on two different factors. Keep linking back to your overall argument, and then again a conclusion rounding off your overall argument. Now, I just mentioned something there about, or I said linking back to your argument. Now, there's an example answer here that is also up on Firefly. What I say is part of an example answer. There's an example introduction and an example first paragraph. What I want you to focus on, I'll try and hold this as close to the camera as I can. This has been color-coded and highlighted to make things a bit clearer. I want you to look here, about 2/3 down the paragraph, this bit in green, where it says, quite hard to read backwards, so I think that the Great Depression was the main reason for Hitler becoming Chancellor in January 1933. It was only after the Great Depression that Hitler and the Nazis started to win mass support, which shows that before this, the established methods used by the Nazis, such as their propaganda and use of the essay, had not guaranteed them masses of support, and it was the Great Depression that caused their support to increase significantly. Now, that is clearly at the end of this paragraph, I've linked back to my overall argument. I'm reminding the examiner what I am arguing. Do that, not just in these 16 markers, do these in the First World War 16 markers too, and in the Middle East 16 markers. Keep linking back to that argument, because it makes your argument sustained. It's constantly reminding the examiner of what you're arguing. Your argument is therefore really clear, shows that you're paying attention to the question, shows that you're being analytical. If you, at the end of every paragraph, kind of link back to your overall argument, that is the key to doing really well on these 16-mark questions. Okay, so, year 11, I'm talking to you in particular. You guys have done really, really well on 16 markers so far in Germany and civil rights. You know how to do these. Again, you've got example answers in your book, you've got example answers in the textbook, you've got example answers up on Firefly. You've done really well on these. You do know how to do them. It's just, as I say, reminding yourself before you go into the exam of exactly how do I answer these, how do I structure it, how many paragraphs do I need, what kind of things do I need to talk about, in what order do I do them. If you just remember these basic things here about introduction, argument, what you're going to focus on, and 3 different factors, the named factor from the question and 2 other factors, whatever they may be. It doesn't have to be that second bullet point for your second factor either. As long as you do that and you have that sustained argument, you're going to do really well. And as I've said already 1,000 times, it's exactly the same technique for Germany and for civil rights. So once you've done one, you can do the other. And as I've already said as well, remember you have got a choice of 16 marker both in the mock in a couple of weeks and in the real exam. When you open up your paper, there will be 2 16 mark questions for each of the topics. Pick the one that you like the best. Okay, so do really read the question, really, look through it very carefully, both questions, and think, right, which one do I have the most knowledge of? Which one do I have quite a strong argument for? And go with that. Go with your gut. But do take your time on that. So, again, hopefully that has clarified 16 mark exam technique. Don't just rely on this video. As I say, look back in your book. You've got help sheets in your book. You've done several 16 markers in your books, both in Germany and in civil rights. Look on Firefly, look in the textbook. There's loads of other stuff to help you with this technique, with this structure. So I hope that's clarified things. Keep your eyes peeled. Might be a few more revision videos coming in the next couple of days. See if I can squeeze a few in. Once again, comment section open below. If you have any requests for videos, stick them in there, and I'll see if I can get around to them before the mocks or after if need be. But yeah, keep revising. Take care, and see you very soon. Bye bye.